Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie and today I'm going to be going through every single series that I managed to finish this year. And surprisingly enough, I got through a fair amount of series. So the way that I've categorize if I finished a series or not is just kind of that. If I finished the series, whether or not I started it in 2020 didn't really matter. There was a couple of series that ended up finishing in late 2019, but I never picked up the finale until 2020, so I'm counting a lot of those. There's a couple of finales that came out in 2020 that I read immediately because I needed answers. And then there are just some that, a couple of rereads that I did, and just general series that I did end up finishing within the year of 2020. Fair amount to get through, so my thought is to go through what the series is, how many books there are, and what I thought of the series overall, and a little bit about the series, mainly about what happens in book one, just so I don't give any spoilers to the rest of the series in case you're interested. The first series I'm going to talk about is the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. This is the epitome of a YA Game of Thrones. We have several different characters spanning 3 different areas of this mystical island called Mythica, and we follow them through war, all of this. We follow several different love stories. Don't get attached to any of these characters. The Fallen Kingdom series is 6 books long with a spin-off that is 2 books long, which I'm currently reading the spin-off series and loving. Overall, this series I would give 4 stars. Every book is a wild ride. I was never really bored with any of the books. I always found them very easy to read. I was immersed immensely. The characters grew and developed, and you grew and developed with them. There are some amazing redemption arcs, character arcs within this story that I just fell in love with, and I would highly recommend this series to any person who loves YA fantasy books. The next series that I ended up finishing is Zodiac by Romina Russell. This is a 4-book series following a girl named Ro who lives on the planet of Cancer in this solar system where each planet is inhabited by a different astrological sign. Each planet has their own societal role and generic characteristics. When Rose sees a vision of the future basically exploding, she ends up becoming the matron of her planet and has to try and convince all the other planets to work with her to destroy this 13th sign that has decided to come and ruin everybody's day, basically. I would give an overall 3 stars, barely 3 stars. It was an extremely interesting concept. However, within each book, there were so many different plot lines, whether it was romance, different subplots, different characters doing other things, and nothing. We had this main overarching plot throughout all 4 books, which was really interesting, but I feel like that was never addressed until the very end of each book. And I found that to be very agitating as a reader. And the main character, she's a very unlikable main character, similar to how I would describe Katniss from the Hunger Games. But at least with Katniss, I understood her motivations as to why she was an unlikable character, and then you got more of Katniss's thoughts, and that kind of turned her into a likable character. With Ro, it wasn't like that at all. I just never liked her through any of the books. The next series that I ended up finishing is Harry Potter. I like to do a reread of this series every year, so it's typically on this list. If you don't know what Harry Potter is about, I don't know where you've been. But it is a 7-book series, and I always give this series 5 stars. I think it is an amazing magical world, and I love Harry Potter. It's about all I can offer you. The next series that I ended up finishing is the Devabed Trilogy by S.K. Chakraborty, which is 3 books long, starting with City of Brass. In this series, we follow a girl named Nahri who lives in Cairo, Egypt as basically a con artist slash healer. And when she accidentally wakes up a djinn, she finds out that she is part djinn, and he takes her to the djinn city of Devabad, and she has to kind of find her place there as she learns that she is the last of a long line of healing devas. This series I would give 4.5 stars because it is so vibrant and it is extremely politically enriched. If you don't like political stories, I would not recommend this series. However, if you thrive off of fantastical political systems, highly recommend this one because there is so much happening. We have our overarching plot. We also have a lot of issues between the difference between a djinn and a deva, and that causes a lot of political strife. Then we have the issue of half-breeds, which is what Nahri is, and she is half djinn and half human, and we deal with a lot of the society and how this society views those kinds of people. And what I really love about this series is this series spans over the course of about 7 or 8 years, and not just over the course of a couple of months like most fantastical stories do. I feel like our characters are so well developed and are so wonderful, and I loved following every single one of them, and I love just getting those inner thoughts and watching them grow. It was a fantastic series. It just ended this year, I believe. Yes, this series just ended this year, and I highly, highly recommend it if you are looking for just this beautifully written Arabic story. It's just a wild ride from start to finish. The next series that I ended up reading was another reread, and that is the Three Dark Crowns series by Kendare Blake. This is a 4-book series about this island shrouded in mist where every generation triplets are born, and when these triplets are turn 16, they have to kill each other for the crown of the island. And we follow our 3 girls, Katherine, Mirabella, and Erisno, as they approach their 16th birthday, and they each find in themselves that they don't want to kill their sisters. They want to get to know them, which is unheard of, and our plot goes from there. I love this series. Overall, I would give it 4 stars. I do find a little bit of it problematic. I think that some of the sisters are more favored in the writing opposed to others. My personal favorite sister was always Katherine, and fight me, this is a hill I will die on. I love Katherine, and she is such an underrated character, and she is so just, her character development is so well written, and I love her to death. So I highly recommend this series if you like the dark, creepy, twisted kind of fantasy stories. Also, there is magic. Each sister is a part of a different faction. You have Katherine, who is a poisoner, Erisno, who is a naturalist, and Mirabella, who is an elemental. And they get to use these powers to try and defeat each other, but they end up using their powers for other aspects. So, highly recommend this series for quick, easy YA read. The next series that I ended up finishing is the Luxe series by Anna Godbersen. This series, I don't know why I finished. I should have just left this series alone. This was a very early 2000s Gossip Girl in the 1900s. There's no magic, it's just considered, I believe, historical fiction. And it was exactly that. It was Gossip Girl, but in the 1900s. And Gossip Girl, I watched it a little bit. It was okay. And this kind of historical fiction is never really what I gravitate towards. I literally only kept going because I wanted to know how it ended. And how it ended, I was thoroughly unimpressed. This is a 4-book series that I would give about 2 stars. If you like the early 1900s kind of drama of high society in New York and that kind of thing, then definitely go check this out. But it is full of early 2000s tropes that could have just been left alone. The next series that I ended up reading is the Antigoddess series by Kendare Blake. This is, I think, Kendare Blake's first series, which is a 3-book series about if the Greek gods were dying. We follow Athena, who is coughing up feathers, basically choking on owl feathers, and Hermes, who is shrinking into nothing, and they have to go and awaken the other people, such as Cassandra, Hercules, Ulysses, Achilles, all of the Illies, to try and save them, as all of the gods are basically getting karmic retribution on their own deaths. Which is very interesting. That aspect was interesting. I never I say I finished this series. I did DNF the third book because I just couldn't. It was way too gory, but it was gory without a purpose. And I just didn't care for how the story was going. It didn't feel like it was going anywhere. It didn't feel like we were getting any resolutions or anything of that nature. And I just, overall, I would give this series a 2-star. Not my favorite series by Kendare Blake. Her other series, The Three Dark Crowns, which I just talked about, is phenomenal, and I would highly recommend that one. This one is just not my favorite. The next series that I'm going to talk about was another reread, and that was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I love this series. I finished the main trilogy and the novella. Technically, this series isn't over, but the main plot line of these 3 books is over. So I'm gonna count it. And obviously when Silver Flames and all the other books come out, I'm gonna continue, when I reread every year, I'm gonna reread with those. So ACOTAR, as this series is typically called, is 4 books long, soon to be 5, coming out in February, where we follow a human girl named Feyre who makes a deal with a fae basically to save her family and ends up having to go and live with him in his manor in the Fae lands. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is some of the most beautiful writing, the most amazing romance I have ever read, and overall just a phenomenally well-written Sarah J. Maas. As everyone on this channel knows, I love Sarah J. Maas. I will read anything she comes out with, like anything, news article, whatever that woman puts out, I will read with enthusiasm because I love her writing so much. So, highly recommend this series. If you like the romance and everything with Sarah J. Maas's worlds, read this. Read it. If you love Beauty and the Beast, read it. It's great. I love it. I can't talk. I should stop talking about this series. The next series that I have is an adult series, and that is the Nevernight Chronicles by Kay Kristoff. This is a 3-book series following a girl named Mia who is trying to become an assassin to kill the Chancellor. This is a Roman Empire inspired series where we have a lot of like the Julius Caesar and that kind of atmosphere and that kind of political system. And this series I would give, I'm between a 4.5 and a 5 with this series because it is a little rough to get into. Book 1 is a little much with the world building and being introduced to the characters and how the political system works and figuring out what Mia's drives are. However, God's Grave was one of my favorite books, which is the 2nd book, and I loved every second of it. I love Mia, and she has these demonati powers where basically she has this shadow cat named Mr. Kindly who gives her sassy advice, and I love every second of it. He is adorable, and this series is just, it's gory. This is an adult series. It's full of gore and swearing and sexually explicit content, so be warned on that aspect. But if you love complex worlds with a lot of more of the history, there's a little bit of magic in this world, but it is relatively low magic. It is more assassin-y and plotting, and this first book is more about her training to be an assassin. So we're basically in this assassin school, which is just such a fun and unique atmosphere to be a part of. And our main character is just so sassy and violent and volatile, and I love her so much. So highly recommend Nevernight if you like Sarah J. Maas, if you like any of the kind of assassin-y stuff. Next, I finished the Thousandth Floor series, which is a 3-book YA series, which is similar to the Luxe. It is a Gossip Girl, but instead of in the 1900s, it's in the future, which I believe it's in somewhere between 2100 or 2200, something to that avail. And basically New York City has been condensed into one large building, which is 1,000 floors. And in this world, the higher floor you live on, the higher status you have. Gossip Girl ensues from there. We have just normal drama, a bunch of teenagers. We have a girl who lives on the 1,000th floor who is supposed to be the perfect girl, who has all of these issues. We have a girl from the lower floor. We have a guy who has created an illegal AI. And we just have a ton of random teenagers who intersect. I would give this series 3 stars overall. 2.5, 3, somewhere in that range, just because I have learned the Gossip Girl kind of stories where there's no real plot besides drama doesn't interest me. I was bored most of the time. I didn't care about any of our characters. The ending was kind of dumb in my opinion. It felt like a cop-out to me, but that's just my opinion. If you like those kinds of things where you thrive off of drama, I like watching drama on TV shows. I want war and battles and deep connections and romance and mystical creatures when I'm reading. I'll watch drama on TV all day long. Like America's Next Top Model and drag show. I watch it for the drama. Like, I'm good with that. But with reading, I just don't care. And I think that that's the issue that I've run into with a couple of these different series. Moving on to a series that I am absolutely in love with, and that is the Iskari series by Kristen Ciccarelli. Which the first book is The Last Namsara, and it's very, very shiny and you can barely see it. This is a 3-book series, which technically each of the 3 books in the trilogy are companion novels, but there is one large overarching plot that runs through all 3 books, but they can be read as standalone. I am in love with this series. In our first book, we follow Asha, who has basically been trying to give herself the reputation of dragon killer because she ended up causing a bunch of deaths with a dragon when she was a child and is trying to redeem herself. But when a prophecy comes out about her being the last Namsara, which in this world Namsara is almost like peacekeeper, she ends up having this very internal battle with herself. And as the series goes on, we learn a lot more about Asha. The second book follows a different girl from a different land, and same with the third book, another girl. But they all intersect, and we meet each of these characters in the books. In all of the other books. We just follow their point of view, and I loved getting that change in point of view because it's something I've always wanted from YA series, where when you are reading an entire series from one character's point of view, there's a lot of things you can miss. There's a lot of different character developments that you could miss and not understand. Whereas this, we meet the girl whose point of view we get in book 2 in book 1, and I hated her in book 1. Book 2, she was my life and I loved her. And I really enjoyed getting to explore all these different characters and their ambitions and their goals, their pasts, and it really ended up creating this such well-rounded world and characters, and it was fantastic. This is a very underrated series, and if you love dragons with fantasy, morally gray characters to the high heavens, highly recommend this series. Go read it. It's fantastic. One of my favorites of 2020. Next was the other series that I ended up rereading, which is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Similar to with A Court of Thorns and Roses, I reread this series every year because I love it and I can't get enough of it. Throne of Glass, we follow an assassin who was put in these slave mines and is taken out to compete in these assassin games to become the king's assassin. And our plot ensues from there. And thinking about that plot aspect of book 1 compared to where we end up in Kingdom of Ash is laughable. If you've read the series, you know. But this, I could never pick between Throne of Glass and A Court of Thorns and Roses just because they both bring different aspects to the table and very different characters to the table, and I love them wholeheartedly. I am just obsessed. Like I mentioned with ACOTAR, I am obsessed with Sarah J. Maas's writing. I am, and I've accepted this lot in life. And I will die on the Sarah J. Maas hill. Throne of Glass has 8 books. Obviously, Throne of Glass gets a 5 out of 5. So did The Last Namsara. I don't know if I said that in my rating for The Last Namsara. Next, I have the Arc of the Scythe series, which is a 3-book long series, which is very a futuristic utopia, dystopia setting where in this world, the only way that you actually die is if you're gleaned by a scythe, and scythes are ordained, and we follow 2 apprentice scythes trying to understand this aspect of the world, which is filled with corruption, which is something they're not familiar with because nothing is run by humans anymore. And this series is 3 books long. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. I might have. But this series it makes you think about the future because the way that this is written with Neal Shusterman's writing, it's way realistic to the point of where it just makes you think on where it makes you question humanity and how technology could potentially advance in our world. And I love that. I give this series 4.5. The first and second books are definitely my favorite by far. The third book had a lot happening. However, with that said, there was a lot happening, but every single aspect of it was needed, which is interesting because it did drag on a little bit, but I can't imagine cutting out anything from that book. So I would highly recommend this if you're a fan of Hunger Games, Divergent, really any dystopian book series. Highly, highly recommend. It just, if you like books that make you think and deal with the concept of what it means to be human, this series right here. And the last and final series that I ended up finishing in 2020 is another dystopian series, which is the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. This is a 6-book series with three printed novellas? 2 or 3. I can never remember. There's a lot. This series follows a girl named Juliet who can kill with a single touch. And when she's basically in this insane asylum for almost a year, having no human contact. She is taken out of that insane asylum and given to the government to be used as a weapon. Juliet does not want to be used as a weapon. Can't imagine why. And our story ensues from there. I really like this. This is a perfect, one of those great dystopian stories where we follow Juliet. We have this immense, growing, fantastic cast of characters who are not only morally gray, but well-rounded and well-developed, as well as our world. I will say the last 3 books, our world basically exploded and expanded, which was so much fun to follow and understand. And we got to know more of the world, and we got to know a bunch more characters and all of that. And I think the way that it ended was good. Not my favorite. I would give this whole series between a 3.5 and a 4. I really enjoy it. It's definitely something that I want to reread. All the covers are gorgeous, like all that. But I feel like the last 3 books took this very weird turn. Like I said, the world kind of explodes and it expands. The world doesn't like blow up or anything, but our worldview blows up. And I liked that it blew up and that we got to see more of this dystopian world and how it got to be this way. But a lot of other aspects changed and didn't quite make sense to me. But I did really enjoy how it ended and how everything wrapped up. And I really hope that there's like an epilogue or something after the ending of Imagine Me. It's just, it was very good, and I do want more from this world. I grew with these characters and I loved them very, very much. So those are all of the series that I ended up finishing in the year 2020. I'm pretty proud of how many I was able to accomplish. I love reading series. I'm hoping to expand this list even more for 2021. There's a ton of books that I want to get to. I'm trying to keep up with books that are coming out. I know a couple on my top of the list. I want to finish the Furyborn trilogy. There's a lot more duologies that are coming out, which if you want me to do a video like this with duologies, I finished a ton more duologies this year, and I am more than happy to talk about those, but with series, I consider that 3 or more. So that's why none of those are on here, or else I would have been talking forever, which is already a really long video. But yeah, so that's going to be it for today's video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!